a young rabbi, after receiving the position in a very big synagogue, calls his mentor. He says to the mentor, I'm here 2-3 months already. I have no day, no night. I can't sleep. People are making me crazy. They're calling me up every hour of the day with their problems, with their issues. They're complaining. They're criticizing me. I don't have a minute to breathe. What should I do? The rabbi said, look, the first 10 years, you should know, is going to be very, very difficult. After that, you'll get used to it. Pertaining to the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, the Torah tells us, Daber b'nei Israel-Hamas, talk to the Jewish people and tell them, B'chodesh hashvi'i, in the 7th month of the year, you shall have the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, Be'echad lachodesh, on the first day of the month, Yiyeh lechem shabbosain, it should be a day of rest, Zichroin Teruah, a remembrance of the Teruah, Mikra Kodesh, you shall call it holy. It's interesting to note that even though we call Rosh Hashanah the head of the year, however, on the calendar, it's actually the 7th month of the year. Because when God created the universe, he created the universe from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is actually the birthday of mankind. He created Adam and Eve on Rosh Hashanah. It's the 6th day of creation. The first month of the year is the month when the Jewish people came out of Egypt. That was the date when God decided to start the Jewish calendar. So Nisan is the first month of the year, which is the holiday of Passover. Then the 7th month of the year is the holiday of Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning of creation for the entire world, for all humankind. Says the Torah, what is the day? What is the mitzvah of the day? It's Zichroin Teruah, to remember the Teruah. What is the Teruah? And what does it mean to remember the Teruah? It's not clear. Furthermore, most holidays has a reason behind the holiday. For example, Passover, we eat matzah because we were slaves and we left in haste. So we know why we're doing this. When it comes to the holiday of Sukkot, we sit in huts. Says the Torah, the reason, because to remember that you sat in huts for 40 years in the desert. Another reason is God protected you with the clouds of glory for 40 years in the desert. When it comes to Rosh Hashanah, the Torah does not give us a reason. It simply says it's a remembrance to the Teruah, which is the blowing of the shofar. Why do we blow the shofar? It doesn't tell us. Now, many opinions say that there is no reason to why we blow the shofar. It's a statute. It's a choik. The Rambam says, even though there's no official reason, there's a hint, and that is Uru Yisheni Mishenaschem, which is to awake you sleepy people from your slumber. Get up, do tshuva, return to God. According to Kabbalah and Chassidus, the day of Rosh Hashanah is Minui Melech, the day we coronate God as king. We accept upon ourselves the yoke of God once again for the year to come. But what does Rashi tell us? What does Rashi tell us? The reason for the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. Says Rashi like this: Zichroin Teruah. What does it mean, Zichroin Teruah? Zichroin Psukei Zichroinos. How do we remember? By reciting the verses of Zichronos, the verses of remembrance. If you have a machzor, which is a prayer book for Rosh Hashanah, there we find in the Musaf service that we recite verses that deal with remembrance. God should remember the promise, the covenant that he made with the Jewish people, etc., etc. These are Zechroinish, remembrances. And then we recite Pesukei Shofres, verses that are associated with the blowing of the shofar in the written law, in the Tehillim, the book of Psalms, throughout the 24 books of the prophets, etc., etc. So this is Rashi's interpretation of Zichrein Teruah. What does it mean? A remembrance to the shofar. Two things. Number one, to recite verses of remembrance. And number two, to recite verses of the shofar. He does not say to blow the shofar. He says recite verses connecting with the shofar. Now Rashi gives the reason. What is the reason that we do the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Says Rashi, Yizkor lechem akedas Yitzchak shekorav tachtov ayil. Rashi now gives us an insight that what is the reason why we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah? Is because this was the day that Abraham took Isaac on the altar. He took Isaac for an akedah. He bound him together on the altar for a sacrifice. God tells Abraham, Kach na es bincha yechidcha, take your only son and put him on the altar for a sacrifice. Avraham Avinu was about to slaughter Yitzchak. And God sends down an angel and says to Avraham, Al tishla yodcha el anar, do not touch the child. According to the Zohar, Avraham actually slaughtered Yitzchak. Yitzchak died, and this is the first occasion of Tchias HaMesim, the resurrection of the dead. According to the simple interpretation, he did not touch Yitzchak. However, Avraham was dumbfounded. He was upset. On one hand, God, you tell me, take my son Isaac for a sacrifice. I had to overcome my emotions. I had to focus on doing your mitzvah. And now it's anticlimactic. Now you tell me don't touch him. On one hand, I'm very happy. On the other hand, I'm very sad. What do? I need to fill that void. God creates a miracle that a ram runs into the thicket. He grabs the ram, he slaughters the ram instead of Isaac. What happens with that? God takes the two shofarot. He takes the two horns of the ram, and God takes it for himself. The first horn, God uses to blow on Sinai when he gave us the Torah. The second horn, he is awaiting to blow when Mashiach will come. And therefore, says Rashi, Yizkor lechem akedas Yitzchak, you should know. When we blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, why are we blowing the shofar? We are blowing the shofar to tell God, remember what our father Abraham was willing to do. He was willing to take Yitzchak and sacrifice Yitzchak for you. You're the one that changed your mind, and you are the one that told us, okay, I will accept the ayil, I will accept the ram instead. But look what the Jewish people are willing to do for you. Not only at the time of Isaac, but throughout every generation, Jewish people have died and sacrificed their lives until this very day on your behalf. And this is the meaning of Zichrein Teruah, to remember what we, the Jewish people, are willing to do for you. Now, every day in our prayers, every day in our davening, we are supposed to recite the Akedas Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak. And in the Code of Jewish Law, it says the reason we do this is in order to give us strength to overcome all the challenges that we encounter throughout the day. So the Akedas Yitzchak, the binding of Yitzchak, is really an empowerment to each and every one of us every day of our lives to be willing to die for God, to be willing to go outside of our comfort zone, to do the right thing and uphold God's law. But now let's analyze this Rashi a bit more in detail. Rashi says, Zichrein Teruah. You should know, Zichrei means to remember the verses of remembrance. And furthermore, the verses of the Shofar. To remember what happened on the binding of Isaac. Who is remembering over here? Who's supposed to remember? Is it the Jew who's supposed to remember? Or is it God who's supposed to remember? Now, what is the meaning to remember? In general, we know a few times a year, Yizkor, a day of remembrance, to remember the souls of our beloved departed. What is the meaning of Yizkor? How can you forget? And if you didn't forget, why do you have to remember? Furthermore, Rashi is known as the classic commentator of the Torah. And there are many rules, principles of how Rashi learns the Torah. Rashi is teaching the Torah to a 5-year-old child. And Rashi does not give reasons for mitzvahs. He doesn't tell us why we do the mitzvah. If the Torah gives us the reason, that's fine. But Rashi, by nature, by principle, does not give a reason of why we do a mitzvah. Yet over here, he does give a reason. And the question is why? Why does he change his principle and give a reason for the blowing of the shofar? Furthermore, what is difficult here for Rashi? In other words, if there's no question in the verse, Rashi is not going to answer it. He's only answering a question. What is bothering Rashi? The word Zakhor in Torah, to remember the shofar, is not a challenging question. Why does Rashi make a big deal out of it and give us an entire interpretation? In truth, what is challenging for Rashi are the words in the Torah when the Torah says in the 7th month, on the first day of the month, Yeh lochem Shabbosain. It shall be for you a day of rest, a day of Zakhor in Torah. What does it mean, Yeh lochem, to you? Why does the Torah need to add those words? It could have said, in the 7th month, it shall be a day of Torah, a day of shofar, a day of the shofar blast. Why does it mean Yeh lochem? And these two words are really puzzling in the eyes of Rashi. And because of these two words, Rashi gives us this entire interpretation. But first and foremost, to understand what is the meaning of Zakhor, when we say you have an obligation to remember. To remember means two things. Number one, it's not a fleeting memory. That's not the meaning of Zakhor. Zakhor means you need to put tremendous application and attention to meditate on this idea. And there has to be, as we say in Hebrew, simas halev, to place it on your heart, that when you think about it, it's so powerful that you feel it. That is the meaning of Zakhor. That is the meaning to remember. Not simply, oh, I remember once that happened. No, it has to be something that really changes you, something that impacts you, something that gives you an emotion. That is the meaning of Zakhor. For example, pertaining to Shabbos, God says, Zakhor es yom Shabbos, remember the Shabbos. What does it mean to remember the Shabbos? So Rashi here tells us, place Shabbos on your heart always. Every single day of the week, you should be thinking about Shabbos. It's not enough that you think about Shabbos only on Shabbos, but you have to think about Shabbos also Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. In other words, when it comes to remembering, there's two things. One is to actually be impacted by it, to have an emotional attachment to it. But number two, it has to bring us to action. It has to bring us to do something. So what are we doing over here? By remembering Shabbos every day of the week, it brings us to do the following. There's a halacha that says, if you're walking down the street Sunday morning and you see a beautiful piece of gefilte fish, you say, wow, this is such a nice piece of gefilte fish. I'm going to save it for Shabbos. So already Sunday, I'm buying it for Shabbos. Monday, I find a nicer piece of gefilte fish. Oh, so Sunday, I'll eat for myself today, and the Mondays, I'll put away for Shabbos. Tuesday, the gefilte fish is even nicer. So I'll eat the Mondays and put the Tuesdays for Shabbos. So the remembrance brings to an action. It causes me to do something to remember the Shabbos. Furthermore, when you remember, it's only when you can forget. If I'm truly remembering, I don't have to remember. So on Shabbos, I don't have to remember at Shabbos because it is Shabbos. Yes. But Sunday, I could forget it's Shabbos. Therefore, on Sunday, I need to remember Shabbos. So the idea of remembering is only when I can forget. For example, by Joseph. Joseph was in prison. He interprets the dream of the butler. He tells the butler, you should know you're going to live. Pharaoh is going to take you back into the palace. Once again, you are going to pour the wine for Pharaoh. Don't forget me. Don't forget that I was the one that interpreted your dream. Now, you're going to go back, you're going to meet your family, you're going to have a party, you're going to do your own thing, but the time will come. You're going to see Pharaoh face to face. You are to remember me, don't forget me. And of course, he did forget Joseph until the appointed moment when he had to remember him. So the idea of remembering is when you can forget. So when the Torah tells us here, you are to remember Rosh Hashanah. Who are we talking to? And what does it mean to remember it? If Rosh Hashanah is only one day a year, it's on the calendar, why should I forget the Rosh Hashanah? So what does it mean here when Torah says, remember Rosh Hashanah? And because of all of these questions, Rashi is telling us the following. Rashi is telling us, you should know, that this remembering is not for us. It's not for the Jewish people. It's not for Rosh Hashanah. It's not only one day a year. This remembering is actually for Almighty God. We're telling God, you're so busy with the whole universe and all the other nations of the world and all the details of creation, because every moment you're recreating the world anew. We're asking you to remember us. Remember what Yizkor was willing to do for you. He was willing to sacrifice his life. Remember the Jewish people. Remember the hostages. Remember the pain and suffering. Remember the Holocaust. Remember the Spanish Inquisition. Remember communism. Remember every single day how Jewish people are suffering. So this is the meaning of remember. It's not only one day a year. One day a year, I don't need to remember. And this remembrance has to bring to an action. What is the action? So Rashi says, number one, the action is that we need to recite the verses of remembrance. We need to recite the verses of the Shofar. In other words, it's not enough that you go to the shul and you bring your sandwich and you bring your book and you listen to the blowing of the Shofar. That's not enough. Even though halachically, yes, you fulfill the mitzvah 100%, absolutely. You go to shul and you heard the blowing of the shofar, you fulfill the mitzvah of the day. But Rashi says, Zakhor in Torah is a lot deeper than that. Each one of us has the obligation to do something. What do we have to do? We have to read the verses of remembrance. We have to read the verses of shofars. By doing this, we are asking God, remember us. We are asking God not only to remember us today. Today, of course, He remembers us. We're all in shul. We're all here. We're blowing the shofar. I don't need to remember you today. The Zakhor in Torah is, we are asking Yeh Lechem. It should be a remembrance to you. That what? That every day of the year, God should remember you. Every single one of you. Every single one of us. And how does He remember us? The self-sacrifice of Yizkor, the self-sacrifice of Abraham, the self-sacrifice of the 6 million every single day, not only one day a year, not only when we count for Yizkor a few times a year. That's not the question. That's not the prayer. We are beseeching God, Zakhor in Torah, every single day. So this is the insight, and this is the motivation. And this is the inspiration that Rashi is giving us, that every single day, God remember us. And how do we accomplish this? By coming to the shul on Rosh Hashanah. How do we accomplish this? By reciting the prayers. How do we accomplish this? By reciting the verses of remembrance and shofar. And in truth, I believe there's one more detail here. We stated earlier that every day, there is the obligation to recite the Akedah. Every single day, there is the obligation to recite the story of the binding of Isaac. The Code of Jewish Law says, as we stated earlier, it's an order for us to have self-sacrifice. But in truth, based on Rashi, there's a deeper meaning for reciting the Akedah every single day, and that is to remind God. Every day, by reciting the Akedah, we are reminding God, look what we are doing for you. And therefore, we need you to do for us, to go beyond your comfort zone, to go beyond your limitations. and take the Jews out of Golus, take the Jews out of their suffering, and bring them about the ultimate Geula. Take this second shofar that Abraham gave to you on that day and blow it already, and take the Jews out of Golus, take the Jews out of exile. I just want to end with one final story. In the mid-1800s in Germany, there was a Jewish boy that was abducted by the church. And the family was looking for him for a while. They couldn't find him. Finally, they found out that this boy was now in the church. They get lawyers, they get the police, they go to the church, they approach the galachim, the priests, and say, yes, we have this boy in the church in our midst. We found him wandering, he was lost, he had no food, he had no clothing, we took him in, we gave him shelter. Well, this child belongs to these parents. Okay, let's ask the child if he wants to go home. In the meantime, they took good care of the child. They gave him candy, they gave him clothing, they gave him toys. Do you want to go home to your parents? No, I don't want to go home to my parents. We're very happy over here. I'm having fun. 24/7, they're taking care of me. They're giving me food, ice cream, TV, machaya. Why should I go home? The parents are distraught. They go to the lawyers, the best lawyers. What should we do? They hire a good, smart Jewish lawyer. And the Jewish lawyer says, look, I'm telling you, a child wants to go home to his mommy. A child wants to go home to his parents. That's a natural thing. Let's get the child to meet his parents, talk to his parents, and this way, the child is going to see his Abba and Mama, Tati and Mami. He's going to say, I want to go home. Okay, so they go before the judge. They tell the judge, look, we understand that the child is right now in the church and he wants to stay there. But in truth, we believe that every child by nature has an intrinsic connection with their parents. And we believe if he meets his parents, he's going to want to go home. So let him go home for 2 weeks. Let his parents, wine him and dine him. And after 2 weeks, we'll ask the child if he wants to stay with his parents or go back to the church. The judge was a good German judge, a good friend of the Jews. And he listens to the case. He says, I agree. But I don't think the child needs 2 weeks at his parents' home. 5 minutes is enough. He'll meet his parents for 5 minutes, and we'll decide after that. The parents are going with sugar. They're going crazy. They know that 5 minutes is not going to be enough. The kid is every day getting everything he wants, getting loved by all these mothers and these sisters in the church, and they give him food and clothing and games and everything. It's going to be very challenging. 5 minutes, they need more than 5 minutes. So what do you do when you have a question, a dilemma? You go to the rabbi. So you go to the Rabbino Tzvi Arbach, who was the chief rabbi at that time, and they tell him the dilemma. He says, look, I hear the question, and I believe you're right. If your child sees his parents, he's going to want to go home. But 5 minutes is not enough. However, I know what to do. You let me handle it, and I guarantee I will bring back your child to you. Really? Yes, I'll handle it. Okay, as they say in Yiddish, the day came, and they decided that they will give the rabbi 5 minutes to talk to the child. However, they want to diminish the time, so they're going to make a long hallway. They're going to put the child on the other side of the hallway, and the rabbi will be on this side of the hallway. Until it gets there, it'll be like a minute till he walks across. Already they'll diminish the 5 minutes, and they'll only have 3 minutes maybe to talk to the child, and then it's going to be over. The rabbi was a chacham, a smart guy. What does he do? He shows up, he puts on his kittel, his white clothing, he puts on his talis, the way he would dress on Yom Kippur night, Kol Nidrei, and he begins to walk across the hallway, and he begins to sing, Kol Nidrei v'yesorei v'shuei v'charomei, and he begins to sing the Kol Nidrei as he's walking across to the other side. As he's singing the Kol Nidrei, he sees the boy standing there, crying with the Kol Nidrei, and singing together with him the Kol Nidrei. And he screams out, "Mama, Mama, I want to go home." He says, "That's my kid. I'm taking him home." This is the meaning of Kol Nidre. This is the meaning of Rosh Hashanah. This is the meaning of coming to shul. I tell parents, bring your children to the shul. It doesn't matter how old they are. It doesn't matter what they understand. By coming to the shul and hearing the songs and hearing the praises and hearing the prayers and getting a candy from the rabbi, these are things which remain in their minds forever. And with this, we will have children who will grow in the ways of Torah and mitzvahs, who will be a pride to Am Yisrael, who will be a pride to the Jewish people, and to Eretz Yisrael and the land of Israel, and very, very soon to see this big shofar. V'hoya b'yoyim ha'hu yitoka b'shofar gadol. Will come on that day that God will blow this big shofar. Uvohu ha'ovdim me'eretz Ashur v'anedochim me'eretz Mitzrayim, and those that are lost in Ashur, and those who are lost in Egypt will come home. V'yishtachevu la'Hashem b'har hakodesh b'shalayim. They will bow down before God in Jerusalem.